Welcome, Mental Growth Network. Today we have our new podcast, How Burnout Affects Your Eating Habits, Science-Backed Insights. And today our guest is Jessica Power, and she is behavioral nutritionist, health coach, and public health professional. Hello, Jessica.
Hello, thank you so much for having me on today.
Jessica helps individuals heal their relationships with food, manage emotional and stress eating, and build sustainable habits, drawing on cognitive behavioral change and mindset work to create lasting change. And before we will start on with our topic, Jessica, can you tell a bit more about your profession related to eating habits and why did you come to this topic and what is your experience in this field?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on today. Yi. And this is a topic that, I'm really passionate about it, especially the impact stress and emotional eating has on your relationship with food. But we'll get into that in a moment. So I'm a registered nutritionist and I have a master's in public health nutrition. And once I had finished my studies, I kind of realized there was a missing link with the nutrition advice, practical healthy eating advice, and then the emotional side that it impacts these behaviors, these eating behaviors. And so that kind of led me down a path of, you know, kind of discovering a little bit more why or how our eating is impacted by our emotions and why some people eat more when they're stressed, happy, angry, sad, and other people may not eat at all. And so there is this emotional tie with food. So yeah, that has led me to working with people from all over the world, the States, the UK, and all over the place to help them heal their relationship with food and create more balanced nutrition. And yeah, I do a lot of consulting, so on and so forth in this field. But yeah, there's a lot of different areas I can kind of go down there, but that's a general overview of what's kind of led me here to today.
Thank you for your presentation. And when we're starting our topic, can you describe us a bit like general for maybe people who don't know what is a burnout and how you can differentiate it from stress?
Yeah, so burnout is that state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion. It's chronic, okay? So it's different to stress, which is more acute. And with stress, there's also good stress and then there's not so good stress. But stress is something that's needed. It's a natural kind of process that happens within our body. Burnout is that chronic cycle of that kind of negative stress impact. So a lot of the time people feel it after being overworked, undervalued, or just stuck in that cycle of doing too much with little support or not taking care of themselves properly as well. So it affects our nervous system, our hormones, mood, motivation, appetite, sleep. And it's basically our body's way of saying, I can't keep functioning like this. I can't do this anymore. And so we'll get into it in a moment. That's why stress management tools are so important because if you don't take control of your stress now, burnout's going to force you to take that rest at some point. So yeah, I always say to anybody, we're humans, not robots. So we have to prioritize these things. We can't keep working at this chronic, fast-paced environment. So yeah.
And how does burnout biologically impact appetite regulation if we talk about appetite?
Yeah, so in relation to your appetite, there's a few things here, but basically it disrupts our HP axis in our brain. So this is where our stress responses are and our appetite. And really, there's two main hormones that are involved here. There's ghrelin and leptin, and there are two main hunger hormones. So ghrelin is the hormone that tells you that you're hungry. It's time to eat. Leptin is the one that tells you that you're full. And when we are stressed, or especially chronically stressed here, it throws these things off. And so it differs in people. For some people, it increases that ghrelin. So it increases that hunger. So it increases that kind of hunger hormone where we're feeling that kind of frequently hunger seeking behaviors. Or it can also, in other people, trigger that leptin where we have no appetite at all. And, people often say this, well, when I'm really, really stressed out, I don't eat. I'm not hungry. I don't know how this is. And it's because of this. It's because of those two hunger hormones. But then, of course, there's other things involved here as well, because if you are chronically burnt out, chronically stressed, your meal timings are probably going to be off, your sleep is going to be off, and we'll talk about that in a moment too, and how that's kind of related. But aside from the kind of biological aspect, there's other things that interlink. So it's not as kind of cut dry, but in short, that's kind of biologically how it impacts.
And if we talk about hormones, for example, cortisol, yet the stress hormone, how does it related to eating habits?
Yeah, so cortisol is a really interesting one as well. And one thing I want to preface is that there's a lot of bad rep with cortisol being this bad negative hormone. It's not. We need cortisol. It's needed to regulate our body's processes. And I think it's important to think that ultimately we have all of these biological processes going on with our body. And you have your cortisol, adrenaline, dopamine, all of these things. And our body is constantly trying to seek a state of homeostasis, which is balance. And so when something comes in to throw that off, for example, stress or burnout comes in to spike that cortisol, that's when we end up having things like increases in that. So we would be more likely then to crave, I would say, like high sugar, high fat, kind of junk food type of things. And there's a couple of reasons for that. It's because we're in that state of feeling like we're in danger. Right. So when we are in that stress state, cortisol comes in, we're in danger. So it's our body's kind of coping mechanism, survival mechanism to try and kind of seek those high calorie types of foods. Okay. It's very primitive, actually, the way that the stress hormones work within our body. But in today's world, too, there's also the behavioral aspect of this as well. So it's also a self-soothing mechanism, too. When you are highly stressed, when you are burnt out, these types of foods give you that dopamine. It gives you that soothing effect. It gives you sometimes even that moment of calmness. But then also when you are burnt out, you're going to have a lack of motivation, a lack of mental clarity, all of these things. And so these kind of foods are in today's world more readily available, right? So think about it. If you've had a really busy day at work, you're super burnt out, you've got a lot on, and you come home, you're not going to cook up a whole meal. You're likely going to, choose if the option is cook a meal or order a pizza, you're likely going to choose that because of that mental overwhelm as well. So there's the behavioral aspects of this too, which I think is important to highlight even more so than like the biological processes with that. So yeah.
But talking about this psychological mechanism, I also want to discuss this topic. It's interesting for me. Sometimes I think that, as I noticed from my experience and looking for other people, people kind of do a self-punishment eating junk food. They kind of say, "Oh, I'm so like unsuccessful," or I don't know, I can't find a job, or even more, I work in the like, I don't know, something is not correct with my work, and I kind of need to punish myself. And how does it work? Like, why do we punish? Isn't it like talking about biological, it is kind of contradictory to the idea that we need to survive and we need to, I don't know, save ourselves in the hardcore situation?
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good point because I feel like in today's world, especially there's a lot of like chatter around cortisol and so on and so forth. But that's kind of like a small part of the puzzle. And the bigger part of the puzzle is kind of what you're referring to here and how stress impacts our eating behaviors in that way. And so it can be this kind of like punishment. And I often call it like that binge restrict cycle. And so when people are chronically stressed or burnt out, they're likely not eating regularly. Okay. So they might be unintentionally restricting food, leading large gaps between meals. So, say they might not have breakfast and their first meal might be, I don't know, 4 o'clock. Or they come home from work late, they've had their lunch at 2 and they might not have anything until 10, right? So, these are really large gaps. And so, that is unintentional restriction, which increases the perceived reward value for these types of foods. So there's that as well that happens. So when we restrict anything, it's like the forbidden fruit analogy. The more you say you can't have the thing, the more you're going to want it. Okay. And so this is this like unintentional restriction. Okay. But then there's also that kind of shame and guilt cycle that happens. So there's that unintentional restriction, and then there's the binge, right? So in eating a large volume of these kind of foods in a short amount of time, and then the shame and guilt that follows that. A lot of the time, people aren't consciously doing it to punish themselves. It's this cycle, that this kind of binge restrict cycle that they find themselves in. And ultimately, as I mentioned before, when we are in a state of chronic stress or burnout, our body is kind of saying, okay, Houston, we have a problem, and our body is trying to create some homeostasis, balance in that. And sometimes that balance looks like in more unhelpful behaviors and things like that too. So it's complex. It really is. And it's why a lot of people are stuck in this cycle and struggling to get out of it.
Mm. No, before asking you solution, of course, I'm already interesting how to get out of this cycle. I want to ask still more about the nature of this behavior. Can you tell more about the connection between burnout and blood sugar instability? Like why we
Yeah.
want candies and how it can affect us, if it can affect us dangerously.
Yeah, no, for sure. There's a lot of really interesting research out there with the correlation between like burnout, insulin resistance, and then also increasing people's risk of things like type 2 diabetes and things like that as well. And insulin is also a really important hormone too in our body, right? So this is something that's also really needed for to regulate our blood sugars. But when you are experiencing burnout, your body is under this chronic stress. It means those cortisol levels are elevated. Okay. And cortisol plays that really important role in regulating those your blood sugars by signaling to your liver that glucose, the release of glucose. Okay. So it's kind of like a domino effect. Like when one thing is impacted, then a lot of things then become impacted as well. So yeah, it's this kind of highs and lows that can happen with your blood sugar instabilities. But as I kind of was referring back to the behavioral side too, when your cortisol is constantly high, your blood sugar can spike frequently and then crash. But this can also lead to feelings of irritability, fatigue, and then those intense cravings too. But then also, if your eating habits are erratic as well, then that's also going to impact those highs and lows too, right? So they all kind of interlink into one. It's not, this one is separate to this one. They all feed into each other. And so it's really important to focus on that root cause. But to answer your question, in short, yes, but stress and burnout can interfere with the body's ability to regulate insulin properly. So it can cause that kind of resistance.
And continuing the topic of burnout, very often together with burnout, some there can be some sleep disturbances. And
Yeah.
again, sleep disturbances, can they affect your eating habits and how?
Yeah, they can. So, this goes back to our hunger hormones as well. So, when we are sleep deprived, that also impacts our ghrelin and leptin. So, ghrelin again being the one that tells you you're hungry, it's time to eat, and leptin telling you that you're full. And so, when you are sleep deprived, it really triggers that kind of ghrelin. We're hungry, we need to eat, right? But then also there's that kind of needing for that comfort or soothing or even like energy as well, honestly, where we might feel, energy deprived because we are sleep deprived. So we're kind of seeking more of that energy calories through food. And when we are sleep deprived, it's those quick, easy, kind of more junk food types. I use junk food in quotation marks because I usually refer to these as fun foods. I think language is really important with how we describe different foods. So I would describe kind of your pizzas and cakes and all that, more of those fun foods. But junk food also, I'll use that word for today. So yeah, that's how sleep impacts as well our food choices. Sleep is a really important one, and I think something that is really overlooked by a lot of people, the importance of sleep and adequate sleep, not just, oh, I went to sleep, like actual REM deep sleep and what those cycles are. And yeah, there's different things that you can do to kind of focus on those aspects, but that's kind of more for a sleep podcast.
Talking about energy, or how about the caffeine? You said that people's craving for energy. There are a lot of things about caffeine. Like some people say coffee is nice, yes, and it's good for heart and it like preserves cancer. And some people say that you should never eat it. You become anxiousness, you like your brain stop working in normal way and so on. What do you think about coffee and caffeine, and especially during the burnout period?
Yeah, so really important thing to note because our body is in this kind of survival mode when we're in burnout. It's seeking a way to try and, bring us back to balance. And so it's like, okay, low energy, this gives me energy, caffeine. Low mood, this boosts my mood, so on and so forth. And so it's this kind of constant seeking to balance because ultimately burnout is that chronic stress, right? We've reached our limit and we're at a stage where, we're struggling to function ultimately. And so caffeine, especially, while it can be helpful in the short moment, it's really not helpful. When you are trying to go like heal through for your burnout because it's going to raise these things, it's going to raise those stress hormones, it's going to raise the adrenaline, all of these things with caffeine. It's a stimulant, essentially. Caffeine is a still stimulant, and it's great for a lot of things, but it's that quick. Right, so it's that quick spike and then quick dip. The same with those foods as well. Those high fat, high sugar foods. It's a quick spike and then a dip. And when your system is already overloaded and burnt out, you're really wanting to kind of maybe kind of reduce on those quick ups and quick downs and kind of lean to more like stability. So I would recommend to maybe reduce down on your caffeine content significantly. Also, if when you're burnt out, your sleep is going to be impacted too. So caffeine will impact your sleep and more specifically your sleep quality. So making sure you're not drinking a caffeinated drink past, for example, like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, just to give yourself enough time and reduce down the amount of cups or the intensity. So if you're someone that has like espressos regularly, maybe try and have something like Americano or a latte or something like that, or reduce down on the amount of cups of coffee that you're doing too. Yeah.
Interesting. So we already started a little bit discuss what to deal with that. So if I'm in burnout, I notice that my eating habits are really bad. Like I eating not a good thing, not right in the time, and sleep is not bad. So how to go out of this cycle? Like should we start from sleep? Should we start from food, or like from what? And like what can be the small steps at the beginning, and what should be the next after this?
Yeah, great. A great question too, because with burnout, your system is chronically overwhelmed. Okay. And so a lot of the time, when we are trying to heal from these things, we think, okay, we need to have a healthy diet now, and we need to exercise, and we need to prioritize our sleep and all of the things. While yes, they're true and important, when your system is already chronically overwhelmed and overloaded, these things don't feel so accessible in that moment. And so it's really important to take it down and really take it step by step. And I would suggest the main things are those lifestyle changes. So, first and foremost is your stress management. That's the first thing to prioritize because you need to really prioritize regulating your nervous system and getting and just taking it down. So, you're kind of up here, you need to to kind of calm your nervous system down a bit more. So then these other behaviors can come in and you don't feel so chronically overwhelmed with the thought of having to meal prep or go to the gym or even go for a walk, right? So a really simple tool that I encourage people who suffer with this is an I am safe breathwork technique. So this is a technique that I've kind of developed over the years. It's basically just taking f 5 to 6 big deep breaths and releasing and saying the affirmation, I am safe, I am safe, I am safe. Because when you're stressed, you're in that fight or flight response. Your body doesn't feel safe. Doing daily tasks doesn't feel safe. Opening your laptop and going to work doesn't feel safe. And so this mantra is incredibly powerful. And using this in many different moments, using this at the start of your day in bed. Honestly, this for a lot of my clients, they're like, oh, I don't know. I'm like, do it when you wake up in the morning, when you're lying in bed. Just the first thing you do, open your eyes, take 5 to 6 deep breaths, repeat I am safe, and then get on with your day and start there. So things like that. And then from there, of course, you can of course go into other like meditation, yoga techniques, and thinking about like gentle ways to calm your nervous system. So when we're feeling burnt out, that's kind of this, overwhelm. The opposite of that is calmness. So yeah, if you want me to kind of give some more techniques, I can, but that would be my main starting point in terms of that.
No, let's go on this. So first, people need to define that what is his stress level. Yes, how to just to start to feel that I'm in anxiousness mode, I'm on overstress mode, I'm in burnout mode. So first step, and then the next step after you recognize that you're in this condition, you start to think how to manage your stress, how to regulate it, how make it down. For example, using breathing techniques, mindfulness training, something simple. Yes, that you don't need to go somewhere, you don't need to do extra effort, you can just do it right now, yes, something simple. But then after some point, the stress hormones start a little bit less. What can be the next stage after that?
Yeah. So the other thing as well, and I would say this kind of goes alongside though that I am safe breath work is moving your body. I often say that emotions are energy in motion, and when you are chronically stressed or burnt out, you're in this state of kind of freeze, overwhelm, and those emotions become stuck. And oftentimes burnout happens from stuffing down our emotions, so not setting those boundaries, not all of these things accumulate, right? And so it's kind of this stuck or trapped energy. And so movement is an incredibly important aspect of this, and not only is it going to help those emotions move through, but it's also going to help to stimulate those happy hormones, your dopamine, your serotonin, things like that. So even something as simple as committing to a 5 minute, 10-minute walk per day. Maybe it's putting on your favorite song and just dancing around your kitchen when you're making your coffee or your tea in the morning. Whatever it is, I always say to people, I don't care how you move your body, just move it. Even if it's a simple shaking, it doesn't really matter in those stages, because also motion creates motion. So once you start that motion of moving, you're going to be more inclined to build on that. It's like kind of like a snowball, build on that motion of moving. So you might start with shaking or dancing, then you might think, okay, I feel okay to go for a walk, and maybe that walk increases, then it leads to the gym. So, it's taking these steps that are catalyst steps, right? So not thinking of the end goal of I need to do, 3 gym sessions a week is like, what's the catalyst here? The catalyst is just moving your body in any ways. So, yeah.
Good. And when we start changing food, at which stage?
Yeah, so this all of this stuff kind of flows, and it depends on the person really. It's hard to kind of give this first, this second. The stress management exercise side are definitely the kind of first things to pay attention to. But naturally, your food habits are kind of going to transform with that as well. But getting back to kind of what I was saying about, the insulin resistance and all of these kind of things with your food habits, it's important to first and foremost prioritize having regular meals. Just regular meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. If you're someone who's telling me I don't eat breakfast, okay, that's fine. You can change back to that afterwards. But when you're trying to regulate your appetite again after it being dysregulated, it's very important to have those three meals per day. And of course, you can include those like two snacks as well if you want. It depends on the person, but really prioritizing that and trying as best you can to have that centered around a protein source, and then building that plate around it. So having your veggies and your carbs with it as well. So focusing on balance and really thinking about what can I add in to create balance? What can I add to this to create balance?
And how about the anti-inflammatory diet? Is it important to stick to it, or it's more advanced mode, or how does it important?
Yeah, so I think with the anti-inflammatory diet, I think for people who are burnt out, that's probably not the most necessary thing to prioritize in that moment, right? Although you could argue that an anti-inflammatory diet is a balanced diet too, right? Because it's reducing down on those processed foods, those high sugar foods, so on and so forth. So there's levels that you can go when you're talking about anti-inflammatory diets, so on and so forth. I would encourage, a balanced diet. So if that includes more anti-inflammatory food sources, then great, and decreasing more of those inflammatory foods like your high fat, high sugar types of things. That is definitely going to support you by regulating your system, but not getting too kind of overwhelmed with the details in this. I think it's important first and foremost to think, how can I create a balanced diet? How can I add more balance into my life? Because when you're burnt out, it's an imbalance. It's, high stress, overwhelmed, mental fog, all of these things. So you're adding these mental tools, movement, more balanced diet to create a bit more of that overall balance.
Mhm. Okay, and just two last questions. How about hydration? How can hydration affect burnout symptoms and eating impulses?
Yeah, so hydration is one of those things where even a mild level of dehydration can impact your system. Every single cell in our body needs water. It uses water. Every single cell. And so, especially in our brain too. So when we are dehydrated, it increases fatigue, headaches, brain fog. And these mimic symptoms of and also worsen that burnout, because if you're burnt out, you're probably going to be suffering from fatigue, headaches, and brain fog. And so it's kind of adding to that, and also making you feel more hungrier, more sluggish, and things like that. And so drinking enough water isn't necessarily like the fix for burnout, but it's certainly going to help manage some of those symptoms as well. So we recommend, it's I think 6 to 8 glasses of water per day is typically what we should be drinking, and also trying to stick to water as well with that hydration, because again, all fluids count as our liquids for the day, but it's important to kind of prioritize specifically water when we're kind of working through this.
And last question, during burnout, any grocery tips? What to do when I go to shop? How to not ruin yourself even more?
Yeah. So, first and foremost, make a little bit of a plan before you go to the store. So, I always suggest to shop for your meals, not just random ingredients. So, thinking that you're just going to walk into the shop and like think, oh, I'm just going to decide what I want when I get there. No, you're already feeling overwhelmed. That's not going to be as helpful for you. So, writing down beforehand, what are the breakfasts that I want to have for this week, lunches, dinners, so on and so forth, and going into the supermarket with that idea in mind, right? And these are really simple things. Okay. The other thing then is allowing yourself to rely on convenience and ease too. So pre-cut veg, frozen veg, fruits, things like that, quick things that you can throw into a meal or make a smoothie, and just thinking about how you can lean on that convenience for your ease. other things like pre-cooked meats as well, like your pre-cooked chicken and stuff like that, like to add those protein sources to your meals. So you're kind of taking away those steps if you need it. And then the other thing is thinking about what you can add in. Okay, so not trying to feel like you have to overhaul your whole diet and change your whole diet. First and foremost, thinking, what can I add in to create more balance here? And I think the last one as well is don't shop when you're hungry or overwhelmed. And, maybe it's shopping, doing your grocery shop online and having it delivered. Things like that as well can be really helpful. And so, yeah, I think meeting yourself where you're at and not taking burnout as this, like, "Oh, I'm gonna get over it." No, yeah, I think it's really important to listen to your body that it's chronically overwhelmed, it's chronically stressed, and it's forcing you to listen, which is why you're suffering from these things. So it's really important to continue to listen to it and change your behaviors to support yourself rather than, make life even harder. So they're my few kind of tips that I would suggest.
Thank you so much. I think it was really helpful and inspiring. I see that we have now very clear steps, small steps, how to change our life to a better place. And especially during this month, we have this campaign of discovering the topic of mental health at work, that burnout condition is something that you should acknowledge, something that you should take care of. Thank you so much because you help us to see it, I think, from more deep kind of biomedical and health perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're welcome. And a final note I would want to add to this as well is that burnout requires nourishment, ultimately. And so thinking about how you can add in that nourishment in every, like mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, all of these ways, how can you add more nourishment? And so that could even be simple things like setting a boundary, speaking to a therapist, eating regularly, like sleeping better, like any of these little small things. So that's my final no on this. But yeah, thank you so much for having me here today.
Thank you so much. So it was Jessica Power, a behavioral nutritionist, health coach, and public health professional. And me, Yi Meandr, I'm digital health expert and community leader of Mental Growth Network. Thank you so much and see you soon. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Thank you so much.